Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. And I think we need to add an item in between 3 and 4. Because according to our operating rules, we're supposed to select officers tonight. Any objection to the addition of that to the agenda?
No.
Hearing none, it's ordered. So that moves us on. Then the agenda is approved as written, and we can move on to election of officers. Do we have any nominations or volunteers?
I nominate the current chair to remain our leader into the next year.
I second that nomination.
Thank you.
I third it.
What about vice chair? Could we nominate our current vice chair to retain her position?
I second that, or
Okay.
I will make the motion if you feel uncomfortable.
Go ahead.
I move that Beth be renominated to serve as our vice chair.
I support.
Any objections? You're done. And now the real question that I've asked you before, Peter, well, first of all, we'll say, does anybody want to be secretary? No. So, Peter, would you be willing to do it again?
I would be willing to serve once more.
Okay, excellent. And anybody want to nominate him for that job?
I'd like to make a motion to nominate Peter as
Okay.
secretary.
Second, any objections to that nomination? Hearing none, it's Peter for secretary. And that allows us to move on to approval of the minutes. We do. I thought we did it by acclamation, but we can vote. All those in favor of that slate, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There's no opposition. And then approval of minutes, 1st of July 2nd. Are there any suggestions, corrections, issues in the July 2nd minutes? I have one on page 2 of 5. Down in section E, you may have accurately written down what we said, but what we said doesn't make a lot of sense. And I'd like to suggest in our deliberations that rather than having said closer to the road is not superior to, that we instead say locating the structure closer to Fairview to increase the rear setback would not be better than where the applicant has placed the home.
You've got it written down, can you repeat it?
I can. So what we would say then in that first sentence is locating the structure closer to Fairview to increase the rear setback would not be better than where the applicant placed the home. And then I had one other addition to hopefully make that section a little more understandable. Still in E, the next to last line in the middle of the line starts with a sentence that says a layperson would. And I would like to change that to say a layperson would see the area behind the proposed residence as a side yard. Does anybody have any other suggested changes to the July 2nd minutes?
I think only you and Peter were here.
Well, if you didn't like what we said, though, you could still object.
Okay.
Okay. Hearing no other comments, I'd entertain a motion to approve the July 2nd minutes?
I move.
Seconded.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? None. The July 2nd minutes are approved. And then the September 3rd minutes are also up for consideration. I don't have any comments on them.
I just have a minor comma correction. And so on page 6, item 2, Philip dash, this lot, it should be comma, as a commercial lot, comma. It's like a phrase. But don't ask me which kind grammatically. Thank you, Joe.
With those changes, I'd accept a motion to approve the September 3rd minutes.
So moved.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? They're approved. Next item on the agenda is public comment on non-agenda items. Is there anybody here this evening that wants to address the ZBA on a matter that's not already on our agenda? Unusual. So now we're on to item 6, action items. Item 1 is 25 ZBA 001. Applicant is Frank and Lisa Johnson, and it's for the property located at 9433 Dexter Pinckney Road. The tax code is D 0402400025. Does anyone here on the board have any conflicts or ex parte contact to report? Hearing none, we can move on to staff presentation. Fletcher, tell everyone here that you're our new Director of Planning and Zoning.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I'm the new Director of Planning and Zoning. My name is Fletcher Ryer. I'm excited to be here with you all tonight.
Tell us about this case.
Sure. Today we have before you a request for variance from section 7.072, required front yard setback. Dexter Pinckney Road requires an 80-foot front yard setback for parcels located in the Lake Residential Zoning District. The property located at 9433 Dexter Pinckney Road, the case that we have before us, is located in the Lake Residential District. The property is approximately 0.23 acres in size. And the surrounding zoning districts are all lake residential, with Little Portage Lake being located to the west of the property. The property consists of a 2-story dwelling constructed in the 1960s. The dwelling is approximately 1,584 square feet with a 594 square foot attached garage. The applicants are proposing adding a new 800 square foot 2-story addition to the existing dwelling. With the proposed addition, the ground floor area would come out to approximately 2,384 square feet, 2,978 square feet with the garage. Essay before the applicant seeking relief from the front yard setback requirement of 80 feet for parcels located in the Lake Residential Zoning District. The addition, as shown on the plans, would be located 36 feet from Dexter Pinckney Road right of way. The variance request in front of you today is a 25-foot setback, which corresponds to the 2-story portion of the home. I would like the applicant to clarify to the board whether or not the entryway is enclosed or whether it's open with just an overhang. If it's just an overhang over the entryway. I wouldn't consider that to be a building. I would, however, consider the addition itself with walls and a roof to be a building. So that's where I found a bit of confusion or a discrepancy in the plans, and I'd like some clarification on that.
Okay,
Moving on to some recognitions of nonconformities on the lot. The lot size itself is legally nonconforming. Lots served by off-site septic require 0.5 acres. This parcel 0.23 acres. The front yard setback is not being met with the existing dwelling at all. The entire dwelling itself is located within the front yard setback. As you can see from the diagrams presented by the applicant, the 80-foot setback is significantly behind the dwelling. The west side yard setback is approximately 0.5 feet, with the minimum being 5 foot today.
That's the west side?
Yes, the west side of the property. All right,
is it west or north?
actually, yeah, that might have been. It is the north. So typo there. So the dwelling itself is a non-conforming structure. It's not meeting many of the standards we see today. However, it was established prior to the adoption of this zoning ordinance. Section 24.05 A and C allows expansions of non-conforming structures so long they meet the current standards of the zoning ordinance, so front yard setbacks. However, in this case, the applicant cannot meet that, which is why they're here in front of the board today, seeking relief from that setback requirement. I will leave the board with a few final comments. If approved today, the applicant would be required to submit a stormwater management plan as their building coverage and impervious coverage exceeds the 20% standard. And approval of that stormwater management plan would be required prior to the issuance of any zoning permit. The applicant is here in the audience today. I'm excited to have them come up and present their request. But does the board have any questions for me prior to that occurring?
I'm sure we will. Does anybody have any questions?
I do.
Go.
So just to be clear, my understanding, and I want to make sure I'm correct on this, is that the front or the road facing walls are not going to change in terms of distance relative to the road, meaning that they're not going to need an additional setback for those road facing walls that are on the current structure as it exists today.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
And so the only thing that we're looking to accommodate, just to be clear, is just the addition and what might be appurtenant to the addition.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank
We're
you.
only addressing the new structures being
Okay.
built. What's existing is not being addressed today.
Is there a change in height? And I couldn't determine this immediately off of what was given to me, because I'm bad at math sometimes. Is there a change in height that may affect? Because there are issues, right? If I remember correctly, relative to changes in height that may affect the front, that may affect the setback of the structure that's already there. Like, are they increasing the height of the structure that's already present?
No,
No.
from the plan shown, it does not look like the height would be increasing
Like
at all. It would,
significantly or
it
anything?
would match the existing
Okay.
height of the two
Okay.
stories that's
And
there.
maybe applicant might want to clarify if necessary. So, okay, thank you.
Which is,
You're
that's
welcome.
non-conforming because it's half a foot away from the property line. for the height.
So that north side yard setback is non-conforming. But this addition is being located on the south side of the home. And the side yard setback on the other side is exceeding the minimum requirements.
Okay.
Any other questions for Fletcher?
I did have one. In the elevation on page, it's their sheet number 5 in the bottom right. Top, the southeast elevation, it looks like the existing, I couldn't quite tell, is the existing balcony being enclosed? In the elevation, it looks like there is siding indicated. And same with the northwest elevation, it looks like there's siding indicated, but on the plan, it just has a note that says outline of balcony above.
I got that same impression too from the plan set. It looked like the second story balcony was being completely enclosed. And I needed further clarification on the entryway, whether or not that's being entirely enclosed, but
Okay.
I would suggest having the applicant walk us through the elevations as well as the floor plans.
Okay, so the companion question to that then would be if that balcony is being enclosed, is that changing the lot coverage area?
If the second story balcony is being enclosed, it would not. The roofs is what we look at for coverage. So adding walls to an existing balcony would not add to that. The addition itself is adding to the coverage standards.
Okay, well, that's with the presumption if the existing balcony does have a roof over it. If the existing balcony is open air, then
Well,
would it?
decks and balconies, gravel driveways, dirt driveways, they're all considered to be impervious surfaces per the zoning ordinance. So regardless of whether or not a roof was overhanging a balcony, enclosed or not, that would calculate into the impervious coverage.
And then my second question was a minor one, probably just in interpreting the drawings. The utility drawing mentions relocating the cleanup, which means the addition now is over the old sanitary. And so, the old sanitary easement. There is a note or a stamp from the Portage Base Lake Sewer Authority that they do not see an encroachment on the easement. So can we accept that then, that there is no, that either it changes, the encroachment changes because they've moved the clean out. But either way, that because they don't see an encroachment issue, we don't have an encroachment issue to consider.
That's correct. And there's further safeguards as well. I take this stamp as the sewer authority okaying the placement of this addition. If the ZBA were to approve this variance request tonight, the applicant would still need to submit zoning permit for review. I would request that approval from the sewer authority prior to approving it. And then it would move on to Chelsea Area Construction Agency for further approval. And they would also require a copy of that approval.
Thank you. And my other question was already answered. Regarding if there was any change to the mass for the rest of the building, and it sounds like for the existing structure, and it sounds like there is not. The only change in mass has to do with the addition.
So Fletcher, I have one other question for
Okay.
you, which is, these are detailed drawings, but I did have some trouble figuring out why, if I understand correctly, they need a variance for the second floor because they're doing the addition. I couldn't tell readily from their drawings where the second floor addition was relative to what was originally underneath it. But if I look at their drawing, page 4 and look at the dimensions on the first floor and assume that those dimensions are similar relative to the second floor, then I get to your theory that their second floor is gonna be 36 feet from the road. And is that the basis for your suggestion that what they need is a variance of, to be 36 feet from the roadway?
That was my interpretation of the plans, yeah.
And so the only reason they need a variance is at least a portion of this building is going to be higher than the original building that is grandfathered.
So the entire reason for the variance tonight is because the applicant's proposing expanding a non-conforming structure inside the setback.
They're going up.
So this is brand new. They're coming out. So if you look at the front, or this would be the side elevation of the home with the garage door.
Yeah,
That second story or the two-story addition is butting out into the yard on the garage side. They are going up, but it's an entirely new piece being added to the existing building.
well, then that's where I'm confused.
Mhm.
Is the new piece that they're adding 36 feet from the road? Yes,
Yes, and we need further clarification on the entryway for included in the plan set, because the applicant requested 25 feet. The addition itself is going to be 36 feet from the right of way, but there's an entryway in front of that addition. We need to confirm whether or not this entryway is just an overhang roof with a stair up to the door, or if it's entirely enclosed with a door directly on the outside. If that's the case, the applicant is correct in requesting the 25-foot setback, and my interpretation was incorrect.
okay, I remain confused. Do you have a drawing that depicts that better than page 4 and 5 and 6?
I think if you, look, I have the same question on page 3 of their mission. One that's in color there. And you see the existing house. Do you have this page? This page?
It's on the other side of this one. That's right.
Ta-da.
Okay. And what we got there is the existing, where it says 9433, right?
Yes.
Okay. Where, and there's the extra Pinckney Road, where are they moving any part closer to Dexter Pinckney Road? On this picture here, where is it going? Is anything they're doing closer to Dexter Pinckney Road, or are they just doing sideways from the existing
They're
building?
just going sideways from the existing building.
So nothing is closer to Dexter Pinckney Road than it currently is.
Technically, yes, other than what's could be created. So I guess, you would be adding more building. So in that case, I mean,
I'm
Well-
talking really about the distance from the road, not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
distance from the road.
That's-
yeah.
is the
Right, because
issue.
that's our variance.
you're
Right,
right.
so I'm just trying to understand, are we approving something that they're building something that's going closer to the road? Or are we just approving something that expands something within the area that they're already away from the road? Does that make
Yes,
sense, what I just
the
said?
second part.
The second part.
Yes.
So what they're gonna build is no closer to the road.
Okay,
That helps. That helps me. I'm sorry if I
Mhm.
jumped
No,
in. It has nothing to
Okay.
do with what you were
Well,
asking.
I'll have more questions later.
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions for Fletcher from the board? That means we are now ready for the petitioner's presentation.
Evening,
Hi.
yeah.
Oh, Frank, I've been asked to tell you that.
Side, there's a button. Push it till it's green. Okay, now we can hear you.
Now we're good.
I'm the petitioner, Frank Johnson, Lisa is here. I don't know where to start at the question, but let me try to summarize what we're doing. Or proposing to do. So the reason for the 25-foot request was that basically is a one-story garage that's there. And then beyond 25 feet towards the lake would be, you know, within the variance. So we get 25 feet, we cover the garage would stay there. And then anything that we do beyond 25 feet towards the lake would be allowed within the 25-foot variance. Now, the 36-foot variance is where the two-story actual enclosed addition begins, but between where that 36 feet in the garage is, we are creating a new entryway with a roof that projects over the second floor, a wing wall that comes out to buffer some of the sound from the traffic. So if I'd known that the interpretation was going to be 36 feet to the two-story addition, I would have run it differently to make sure that it was understood that, you know, we want 25 feet as our variance and be able to do anything to the existing two-story structure beyond it.
Okay,
So, and if you look at the reasonableness of the 25-foot, so 80 feet, that's this blue dash line. So you can see there's essentially only this house that's within the 80 feet setback. Their garage isn't, but the house is. So there's nothing conforming the 80 feet on this side of Dexter Pickney Road. On this side of Dexter Pickney Road, the 80-foot setback is out in the lake. Well, these are all non-conforming. So, but you know, that's the beauty of the 80 foot. It makes a discussion like this happen, so we can all come to an agreement. So unreasonable things don't happen, which I get that, and I like that. So, the 25-foot setback is the dashed red line on both sides with the shaded part. And you can see still there aren't any structures that void, you know, don't void that. So 25 feet seems reasonable. That garage has been there for a long time. So that's why we thought that it's reasonable from that 25-foot setback towards the lake, that we'd be able to, you know, within the setback of the 50-foot setback from the water, we'd be able to create something for ourselves. And the intent is, you know, we live right next door, so why did we buy that house? Sometimes I wonder, but we did.
when I looked at it, I knew.
So, yeah, we've been looking at it for a long time, but at any rate, our intention is take it from a duplex rental, turn it into a single family residence for ourselves, but it will primarily be used for us when we become mobility challenged. So no steps, we'll have an elevator, it'll be all ADA standards. And so we'll have lots of clearances for wheelchair maneuverability. And then eventually after that, when we need assistance in living, that'll become someplace where an assistant will live with us. And we won't have to look for an assisted living place. We'll have it. So it's avoids the trauma of that whole part of life, in theory. So in between that time, we thought, well, we'll use it as a guest house for our family and friends. It's not gonna be a short-term rental. We did that before short-term rentals were even known as short-term rental. The duplex we tore down to build the house next door was technically these days would be a short-term rental. That's how we found out about it. We stayed with it. Property owner ended up buying it from them with booked short-term rentals coming forward in it. So we've done that drill. It's too much work. We don't need to do that. So the idea of the addition is that this structure is only 22 feet wide. It's essentially a double wide. So to get ADA type clearances and have enough room for kitchens and other stuff to make this comfortable, we need more space. So that's why we propose the addition is we'll add on to it and create more space. As far as the height that came up, we'd love to bring it higher because the existing ceilings are not 8 feet. So right now, our proposal in our mind is that we'll try to manipulate that so we can get higher ceilings where we're able to through construction and renovation. So we aren't proposing to take the roof higher, although we surely would like to do it to get that additional height, but at that point, we're gonna raise the roof. You might as well take everything underneath the roof and the roof down and start over. So, but still, if we did that, we need to know, okay, are we talking 25 feet setback or are we talking 80-foot setback? So it's sort of like square one, designing everything and then coming to you and saying, here's what we've got, isn't it wonderful? Give us a variance based on what we drew, or is what we chose to do is to come before the board and say, this is our intent, this is what we'd like to do. Is this seems reasonable to us? Does it seem reasonable to you? And again, the 36 foot, that seems, if we're gonna use that as the reason why, or the distance, then we should use 25 foot because we're really modifying the house from 25 foot on. So I think that touches on everything.
Okay. Any questions of the applicant from the board? Go.
So if we were to make a motion this evening that said something to the effect of, as shown and described, substantially as shown and described, or something along those lines, and we can have a sidebar on that when we talk. Are you okay with that? Because it sounds like, you've given us your idea, but from the conversation and your presentation, I get the feeling that we might have to deviate a little bit from what has been shown. So I want to make sure that when we construct the variance, and usually I'm the person who makes that language happen this evening, as shown and described, substantially shown and described, is that okay with you? Would you be sufficient? And I'll just leave it at that. Would that be okay?
Well, you're asking me if you said 36 feet was your decision?
No, I'm asking if we said, okay, in part, yes. In part, in case that entryway is considered, because it's not just one of those little pergolas that's hanging out, it's not a 1 or 2 inch pergola hanging off the top or off the side of the wall. It sounds like there's going to be a rough structure there, and based on what I see in figure 10 or page 10, this drawing,
Right.
it looks like it's going to be extending from the side of the
Bending that
home.
black wall all the way to the
Yeah.
roof. So
Yeah.
the wall that comes out, the roof that goes over,
Yeah, yeah.
like this and weather, so.
So, I'm trying to make sure that when we approve the variance, that it's the reasonable amount necessary and not, basically saying, oh, you can build a house anywhere, 25 feet back, that's not, I don't know how we would all feel about that, we haven't discussed this, so I just want to make sure that if I was to say as shown and described or something along those lines, if you would be okay with that. Or do you want that 20, is your goal, because if I say 25 feet, that means you're gonna be able to build that addition all the way up up to 25 feet.
I'll tell you the rationale why we're gonna do that. You ever stood along Dexter Picnic Road during the day when the grass
Oh,
was
yes.
going? So, no, we don't want to get closer to the roof.
Right,
That's
Right.
why for the entry, we want to build a solid black wall up. To shield us from some of that
Right.
noise, so it doesn't go into the entrance. So, no, we would not we wouldn't want to do that.
how wide does that entrance come off of the main structure as it's depicted? on page
It
10.
basically starts at the two-story, existing two-story car.
Oh, it starts at the existing
Yes,
two-story,
you
but
have
the
a one-story
overhang,
garage,
that's, yeah,
And then the entrance would start where the two-story car from the existing house.
okay. So it's where like that deck that's practically falling off the side of the house is
Yes,
located.
from here.
Looks like it's 5 by 6 sticking out.
Okay,
Yeah, and again, these numbers sort of like who's on first and
Yeah.
and second.
Yeah.
We proposed this because we thought this was reasonable. This is close to what our ideas are. We haven't hired an architect yet. so,
right.
We've got a ways to go. So will there be changes?
Potentially, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, okay. I wanted to make sure I understood that. So if that's where the deck is hanging off currently,
Yes.
then now I understand and now I see. So thank you. I appreciate your clarification on that.
And the other question that came up was a porch that projects off towards the lake, is that covered? No, it's not proposed to be covered. It does not have a roof over it.
Okay, but the porch entryway does have a roof over it?
Yes.
Okay,
So I was just, if you go with hoses, blah, 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 and as it turns.
If you want to speak to us, why don't you come up and use the
Introduce
mic
yourself.
I think we're gonna-
and introduce ourselves.
Well, I think we're gonna have to. When we were doing this, we thought, okay, this is good. We've had some builders out and they're saying, you're not gonna be able to save this thing. You're just wasting your time. So my fear is if you don't have 25 feet, and we do have to raise that roof and take that, all that stuff down, then we're in violation for the 25 to the 36 feet, because unless we leave it blank and start the house and just have an open air, that's our fear.
Okay.
That's, I think, but maybe I'm not saying it right, I don't.
Any other
Thank
questions
you.
for the applicant? I'm sorry, I'm still a bit confused and following on Beth's comments. What we typically do if somebody's seeking a variance to build a particular structure, which we know will not in its requested form comply with with our current zoning ordinance, we ask for drawings that show exactly what people are planning to build, so that when we think about granting the variance, we know specifically what we're approving. And then typically our approval will set forth the variance and say, as long as the structure is built substantially according to the plans that we've had a chance to see. And I'm still not I think that the reason that you need a variance here has to do with height. I think you could build your garage 25 feet from the road without any particular difficulty, because if you were in the same footprint as the old garage, you would not require a variance. It's only when you go up in that footprint, because our ordinance specifically says that you can rebuild something that gets knocked down as long as you do it within its footprint and don't go higher. And so I assumed that that was the major reason that you were coming here, was because what you were building at some point was going to be taller than what's already there, and therefore you were seeking a variance. If you're seeking a variance to build a structure that we don't know what it is yet, only 25 feet from the road, I don't think we've got enough information from the data that you presented here to say, yeah, that'll be fine. You can have a 25-foot setback. That's my concern, is that I still don't know precisely why a variance is required for what you're doing. And once I know that, I can still tell you that I would not be comfortable saying, but that's okay, you can go any place, you can go within 25 feet of the road if you decide to redesign this in a completely different way.
But on the other hand, it seems like the recommendation for the board is saying 36 feet is okay, but 25 not.
Well, that's why I was confused both about Fletcher's suggestions and reading your drawings. I was trying to figure out if some portion of your second floor is not the existing location of the existing house. Is that,
That's correct. I mean, yeah, we're proposing to, on the current proposed concept, we're adding a 20 by 20 addition
right,
towards our existing house. And
right,
that's 2 stories.
right. And is that 20 by 20 addition, is it 36 feet from the road or is it more than 36 feet?
No, it starts at 36.
Okay, so that's, again, then I kind of properly interpreted your drawings, which is that you're planning to go higher. And that would require us to give you a variance. And we could give you that variance based on the drawings that you have submitted, if everybody agrees that it's appropriate to give it. But we can't give you a blanket variance to go 25 feet from the road if you show us drawings that show that you're not, that's not what you're planning to build. You've given us drawings that show us that you're planning to build something only 25 feet from the road, except when we get 36 feet from the road, you're gonna go up. And we can consider all of that and decide whether that's a reasonable thing, but once we've done that, that would be the variance we'd give you. And I guess, again, I'm only the chair, I'm not the board, but it seems to me that if you are not entirely certain what you want to do with this, and maybe want to talk to a builder and so forth, maybe we should table your request until you can come back to us with a plan that says, yeah, we're all done, and it turns out we do need to be a little bit closer to the road than 36 feet, and here's what it's going to look like. And let us deal with it then with a single trip to the ZBA, single set of fees and so forth, rather than having us consider your variance, give it to you tonight, and then have you think, well, really, if we could only do 34 feet from the road, then it would be so much better.
Well, I understand your thinking on this, and really, I think it comes down to, on the current drawings, the new entryway that's really closer to the road than 36 feet. In my mind, had I known it was gonna be interpreted that the 2-story addition was gonna be the line of demarcation, I would have drawn it. So that, you know, because the 2-story portion of the existing house seems to me, that is sort of, that's the line that's reasonable to work with going forward. We aren't asking to add a 2nd story to the 1-story garage. We're really asking that we can do with, starting at the 2-story portion, we can develop plans. And we know that we're coming to get a permit, it's gonna be reviewed by Fletcher. So in these drawings, obviously you can't build a house based on the drawings you have in front of you, not enough information. So it'll get another look. And we went through this process multiple times with the house we built next door. So we're sort of basing on our experience that we came before the board, we had a discussion, we had an agreement on, and we had multiple variances on that piece of property. And there were still changes after that approval, but it was the planning department and the building department that had it in their hands at that point to make sure that it was in compliance with the variance.
Sure, but we can give you a variance of 36 feet based on drawings that you've given us now. I don't see how we could give you a variance of 25 feet based on the drawings that you've submitted, because you haven't shown us structures that are,
The entryway is structured, it has a structural.
well, but it's not
support.
25 feet from the road, is it?
Yes, it is.
Well, then once again, I fail to grasp the drawings.
So I'd like to clarify if that's possible, Bart.
Yeah,
So that entryway would fall in the space that that's already currently being occupied by the deck that literally looks like it's gonna fall off the side of the house already.
okay,
And so when you're looking at it from the road, I drive by this house every day, 2 or 3 times, maybe 4 times a day. And there's an overhang over that area that looks like it's gonna fall off the side of the house. And that area is where that entrance is gonna be located in. So that doesn't change very much, but the issue is height, right?
yes,
So, that actually, in my mind, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, in my mind, that height will increase there, right?
Yes,
Okay, but then there's the addition to, and this would, the new part subsumes that thing that looks like it's gonna fall off the side of the house, correct?
no, that, obviously, the thing that's gonna fall off the house, will fall off the house.
Yes,
But there's no structural wall supporting the end of it, and what
you're gonna put a
proposing-
structural wall there, yeah.
We're not leaving that roof, if you can't
Yeah.
save it. But we're adding a structural wall or adding a roof that starts at the 1-story height and goes up at the same pitch as the roof
Okay.
into the second-story portion of that elevation. So there is, I mean, it's really, what do you call an addition? Do you call an addition the 20 by 20, or do you call the addition starts with the new entranceway and the structural wall and the roof above?
Yeah. So my only other question is there a possibility that even the height of the garage might change?
No.
Okay. Okay, because that would be a concern for another potential variance. That might be necessary, but if that's not gonna change, then,
No.
okay, good, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that.
so Frank, is there in this stack of drawings, is there one that shows the old structure in its entirety, including this entranceway, as well as the entire proposed new structure?
Yeah, well, may I approach?
Absolutely. As long as you don't attack me.
All right, so if you look at this,
Yeah,
that's why I put these existing elevations. So here's just entryway we're talking.
okay,
This is a new structural wall to hold this roof
okay,
there. So the existing two-story structure starts right there. You can see it's held up by.
oh, I see. So you're going a little bit further toward the road with that.
We're just starting at where the two-story existing part starts, that's where. that
Okay,
addition
but
starts.
when Fletcher measured things, or when you measured things, isn't that 36 feet from,
This is 36 feet.
In elevation. The 36-foot line occurs
There.
where the new garage, or the new build, sorry, where the
Okay.
new footprint, the 2020 is being
Oh,
added. The 25-foot line is the existing face of the 2-story structure,
no way.
Yeah,
It's there.
no,
not the
No.
2-story.
Oh,
This is the right.
Yeah, this is the 1-story.
okay,
Existing garage, then this is the 2-story portion begins here.
I see.
And this is where that new roof gets added to cover the entryway.
I see. Okay,
And that's the portion, and so when I sort of, if I interpret this,
That's right.
the new addition falls behind the 36-foot line, hence Fletcher's suggestion of
Concern,
variance
but-
based on the
but
36.
this is
Oh, that's 90.
25 feet.
It's falling within the 25-foot zone, and the one concern there with the distance as written is if we were to grant that based on the fact that the building design isn't final, that we don't know that you don't come back and fill the whole space between 25 and 36 for the entire width of the lot. So in my mind,
We have percentage of coverage issues.
Mhm.
So yeah, we have limitations. We can't. just-
exactly.
Yeah.
So yes, there's other things that would potentially prevent that from happening. But I think for the comfort of the board, when I look at how we could actually approve this, it would be in my mind with at the 25-foot line with an allowance for the X by X cover over over the entryway. That way, it's not granting this blanket. But I believe Fletcher has a comment.
I think that's an excellent point to make, and as Brooke stated earlier, you can't add height to a non-conforming structure, right? But both the addition and that entryway with the wall blocking the road and the roof, those are separate from the existing building. So they're essentially adding a new structure, new height, not increasing height that's there currently. So they still need a front yard setback variance, but as it sounds, a wall and a roof, that would be considered a building. So that breezeway would be accurate, or not the breezeway, the entryway would be considered new building, thus needing that front yard setback.
And a hypothetical there, if it was pergola, meaning lateral supports that are open air, because they don't impact water effectively coming down on it, they don't affect water hitting the ground, that would not then classify.
So we measure setbacks from foundation. So roof overhangs, those are projections. Those can actually project into setbacks by, I believe, 5 feet in Lakes Residential. But those overhangs that you're talking about, I believe your hypothetical, that wouldn't equate for
For
the
some reason,
setback.
I had the number 5 in my head and I'm not finding the plan again. I flipped through it back and, oh,
Oh,
It's on this
okay,
one.
so I think I have a much better understanding of your situation. And given what has been presented, isn't it true that he wants a 25-foot setback to a portion of the new structure? I mean, he's essentially just told us that entranceway is going to be 25 feet from the road, right?
Right.
Generally, in the past, I don't think that we have dealt with issues of saying, well, if one portion is 25 feet from the road, other portions cannot be. The definition of setback is the distance from the road to the closest building structural element near the road. And so if we take the applicant at his word that he wants a 25-foot setback to get to that entranceway structure, then that's the request.
I would agree.
And I'm sorry, I got us way down the wrong road because I considered Fletcher's concerns about 36 feet and thought I could find them on the drawing. I didn't find your other structure that was only 25 feet from the road. The only other thing that you'll have to deal with is that we do typically say that we've approved this variance based on the drawings we've been shown and assume that you will build something that is substantially the same as what we've approved the variance for. So that will get you into the wiggle room area of try to decide whether or not, and convincing others that when you make your changes, it's substantially the structure that we looked at.
I have a question for the applicant, if that's okay. When do you think drawings take time. When do you think you would be able to have drawings? Like, when are you gonna approach the architect on this?
We're in no hurry because we're still moving. so.
Okay,
it's not what
fair
we
enough,
do,
fair enough.
but,
Well, you know, if we give you a variance, you gotta
We
get,
got it 1 year.
you gotta break ground in a year.
well, unless we get an extension.
Unless you get an
Right,
extension.
so I mean, again, this is step one of, okay, now we know
Okay.
what we've got to work with, now we can talk to architects and
Sure.
builders, so.
Mm.
We aren't in any hurry, let me put it that way, we don't expect to break ground in 6 months. We don't know,
Okay,
so we'll have to work within the year and then whatever the extension would grant us, and then. If we don't make that, we'll have to come back and talk to you again, so,
okay. All right,
but,
But yeah. Our hope would be within a year, that's our hope. By
okay,
next spring, we can get everything in a row.
okay,
That's our.
I have one more question for Fletcher.
absolutely.
Is there something already within this application as written that does address the lot coverage issue? In other words, if we were to approve with the 25-foot setback, is there something already within this that would keep them from building something bigger?
Yes, my review. My review would be the safeguard to ensuring that whatever's applied for substantially complies with what was reviewed today. You know, if a few doors or windows are changed, but the structure remains consistent with what's here today, I would say that would be appropriate to approve. And then, of course, with a stormwater management plan on top of it.
So if we were to approve as proposed, this the whole porch question really is, or the entryway question is what comes to the roof there. If they felt like making it shorter, they could conceivably create the 20-foot by a few inches, as long as it stays within the area, or sort of vice versa, if they decided to pull that porch back a little bit, they're still going to be bound by that lot coverage, and there's nothing. And that's what would keep them from all of a sudden building the whole thing out to 25 feet to the road. You know, no, they don't want to be at the 25-foot into the road area. But that, like you used the word safeguard, still exists, even if this variance is approved at the 25-foot request.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Hearing none, we're ready to move on to the public hearing. Do we have any letters that have come into the file?
No,
Okay.
no, on the other end.
Then what about, is there anybody here this evening that wants to talk to us about this request? No. Okay. Then we're ready for zoning board of appeals deliberations and standard of review.
May I just note the email from Julie Teacher?
Oh, yes.
Oh, my apologies, I thought that was for the other item.
No, that was, the variance requested by Frank and Lisa Johnson.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we did get a positive note from Teicher.
Julie Teacher,
Oh, nice.
yeah,
Yes.
Teicher. Teicher.
Yep.
And they live at 9380 Dexter Pitney Road. So,
Okay. I don't know if anybody have any comments that want to talk about this?
The only thing I want to say is, I'm fine with the 25 feet. Like any other variance, they just can't build anything they want within the 25 feet. It's gotta be substantially like what they've submitted here.
Yep.
So I mean, to me, this is just, at this point now, that it's been clarified,
Yep.
it's a standard variance.
Yeah. Any other thoughts?
I mean, again, Peter just said it, and I just want to make sure that, substantially is shown and described. I mean, they could end up having to make some alterations, but as long as in my mind, as long as the addition remains in that, do we want to say as long as the addition remains in that 36-foot setback? I mean, or are we okay with saying 25 right across the way? And then my other question is, and maybe it's more appropriate for Fletcher to address this. We now have an increase in the impervious surface and lot coverage that goes well beyond the 20% allowed in that district, right? And we didn't have a variance before us this evening for that. Wouldn't we need that as well?
I guess Fletcher, doesn't that get addressed by the requirement to have a
The stormwater damage.
stormwater management plan?
Okay.
That's not
Correct.
our
So
purview.
That's
That-
not his.
That's up to them to
Okay.
deal with.
correct. So in the Lake Residential Zoning District, you're allowed up to 30% lot coverage for buildings, 45% for all impervious
Thank you.
surfaces.
Okay,
When you exceed 20%, that triggers a stormwater management review, and the township's engineering consultant, OHM, would review those plans and make sure they're in compliance with our township standards.
so in effect, though, he could create something potentially larger though than what's we've seen.
Well, that's where you have your substantially in compliance with the drawings that we have seen.
I know, I feel really, if this is not what they want in the end, I mean, we can grant them the variance, but I would hate for them to have to come before us again.
Well, that would be their decision.
Okay.
In any variance we grant, there's all, what you
You're
just
right.
said is true in any variance we
You're right.
grant.
Normally, though, we have like, architectural drawings
Yeah.
from, and
Yeah.
everything, so I just. I'm feeling right now. The
Well,
applicant,
you're-
that's,
That's their problem.
not mine, you're right.
I totally get where they're coming from because when we did our thing, we came through, but we had more substantial plans drawn already. But, before you get way too deep in the woods, you want to make sure you can do a couple of
Yeah,
these
you don't
things.
wanna
so.
spend all that money, yeah.
I would add though, just before you make your comment, because I think this kind of gets into it. One of the ways that personally I like to interpret and look at the zoning code is there's an elasticity that goes with it. The way this variance is written, the discussions that we've had, it makes me feel comfortable that if we were to grant this, the small amounts of elasticity that are still in it are kept in check by the stormwater plan and by the lot coverage calculations, the physical boundaries that you already have, and the existing context that's around you. And so, yes, I do tend to look for a lot more detailed information, but again, the elasticity fits, and the elasticity, especially when you talk about things also like if the windows change and doors change, that's part that normally wouldn't fall under the zoning
That's right.
review, which is sort of where I'm thinking, in my mind, I'm coming to a level of comfort with it based on, really when it comes down to it, Fletcher's opportunities to continue being involved with the case to oversee.
Something we should consider.
Okay, so to summarize, it sounds as if we built exactly what we've shown. People are comfortable with 25 feet. If we build it exactly as the papers in front of you show. That's kind of what I'm grabbing. Lisa's saying, well, if we sort of know that you're comfortable with the 25 feet, why don't we table this? Come back when we have a set of building documents.
I'm sure that the vice chair would think that was a really good idea.
I would,
And if you like it, then that makes two of you.
Well, yeah, and I think if you're looking for comfort and you need to have drawings, you need to have, this is it, gang, then that would be the way to do it. But I have to point out.
Yeah.
As far as building to the max, look at what we have next door. That's not
You know,
built to the max. We're not looking to upsize when we move to this.
Your building next door is beautiful. You have done a wonderful job on it. Every time I drive by, I appreciate it.
No, thank you.
Yeah, we don't go down, when we approve something, we approve a specific building. We don't go down the road of speculation of, you could just build in this area what you want. It's just
Yeah,
not the way we are.
so.
generally.
If you would like us to table, Fletcher, I'm hoping that in your short tenure here, you know better about this than I do. If there are any limitations on what we can do to table this.
And
In other
What do you
words,
mean by
the applicant
limitations?
would like us to table this request. And do we need to set a set time, or can we say that he's got to get back to us within 90 days or?
Understood. Yes, the ZBA could set boundaries on the resubmittal, or you could just table it until the
Until
applicant's
the
ready to
applicant
come back.
returns? Well,
Oh.
if you tell us we can do that, that would be my,
Mhm.
how about you?
I just want to make sure table is the right word that. we should
Exactly.
use.
Yeah.
Withdrawal, maybe.
That's
sounds
what I
like-
was gonna suggest. That
another-
he just, that we allow him to withdraw his application.
Yeah, not table.
Well, but if he withdraws it, then does he get credit for the money he's spent and get to
Yeah.
bring
Oh,
it back
yeah,
in
that's what I-
without having to go through it all again? I don't want him to have to do
Yes.
that.
Yeah. There is another word other than table.
Okay, adjourn?
Suspend.
Refer for reconsideration. I don't.
We could pass this over.
I tell you what we'll do is, when we get to the minutes next time, we'll know what the right word is and we'll put it.
Put it in there.
Okay, as far as an extension period, if you want to be comfortable with drawings, give us enough time
Mhm.
to get the final drawings. And that's
Okay,
what
what would you consider that to be?
the 18 months, I don't know. So,
Mm.
I mean, we have to talk to architects, we have to get their concepts, see if they match with what we want to do. They may, like the house next door, the architects we hired pretty much took what we had presented to the ZBA with some modifications, but you know, that didn't change much, but we don't know. And we hope that they change our ideas better.
Yes, and Fletcher has answers for us now.
I pulled up the bylaws and the correct word to use is postpone.
Postpone.
Oh,
Okay, and does it give us any limitation on our ability to postpone?
Just says, postponed until the earliest available regular or special ZBA meeting that meets noticing requirements.
That's not too
That's-
good,
Yeah.
because that would be the
Smart,
next
maybe.
meeting.
But then we can postpone again at that meeting.
I guess we could have this be our regular.
Postponement, that seems like an odd, that's like a bit of an odd way to do business.
Every meeting, but that doesn't seem very efficient.
Let me keep digging.
Okay, keep digging.
If we were
I
to
tell-
postpone at least for the next meeting, while we find out what some options are for a longer term postponement.
How about a deferral?
Okay. Why don't we do this? Why don't we pass this matter while Fletcher studies his computer? And if you would like to stay, you may, and if not, we'll come up with something before we leave for the evening.
That sounds good.
Okay,
So
but we know what your desires are and we'll try to work within them.
I appreciate that.
Okay, good.
And if it's postponed every meeting, does that mean we have to come to every meeting to hear it postponed?
I hope not, but then I also hope not to have to go through that process at every meeting too, so,
All right,
We've done, that.
yeah.
yeah, thank you so much.
we've done that in the past.
Yeah, well,
Okay,
all right, so we have temporarily passed this matter for later consideration, which moves us along to item number 2, which is 25 ZBA 002, Brent C. Williams, for installation of a fence in the Barrington Drive access easement between 13,816 and 13,800 Edgewater Drive in Gregory. Anybody have any conflict of interest or contact with the applicant to report?
nothing more.
we lived in Half Moon Hills, but
No. Okay. Hearing none, we can move on to staff presentation and zoning board of appeals. I hate to interrupt you during your search, but tell us about this.
Thank you. Good evening, ZBA members. Fletcher Ryer, Director of Planning and Zoning. Today we have in front of you a request for variance from section 16.16 A to B to allow a split rail fence to be located in the water body yard. As stated earlier, this Proposals located at the Barrington Drive access easement between 13816 and 13800 Edgewater Drive. The property in question is zoned lake residential. All of the surrounding properties are also zoned lake residential. The applicant is proposing the installation of a 20-foot long, 4-foot tall split rail fence perpendicular to the Half Moon Lake shoreline at the Barrington Drive access point. As you'll see in my review, there was a court order, case number 20-001269, dated October 8th, 2024, signed by Judge Timothy Connors, specifying the construction of the split rail wood fence. The court order stated that the split rail fence can be constructed 6.61 feet from the eastern edge of the defendant's property. The fence shall extend 20 feet southward from the water's edge of Half Moon Lake, leaving a 40-foot opening and additional 6-foot wide gaps. The applicant initially submitted a zoning permit request in November of 2024, which included this fencing in the water body yard. Staff recognized the issue of the zoning ordinance not allowing fences in the water body yard, thus triggering the need for this discussion tonight. The applicant did revise that original proposal to install fencing outside of that water body yard. And for those of you not familiar, the water body yard is the open space between the shoreline and the nearest walls of the buildings. So the two houses between this access easement, that water body yard is the back walls of those homes all the way to the shoreline. I do want to emphasize that, there is a court order for this fence to be erected. The ZBA, however, retains the authority to make their decision based on the ordinance criterias for granting a variance. This case is unique in the sense that it's not a private property we're looking at. This is a platted access easement to the lake. I would consider this to be a recreational amenity rather than, something they use for private use. It is probably different from many of the cases the ZBA has seen recently. If the ZBA were to approve this variance tonight, I did offer a few recommended conditions. One is for the applicant to apply for the required permit. Fences require minor zoning permits. The fence should be constructed with wood materials consistent with the visual character of the lakefront. That there's to be no signage, lighting, or barriers attached to the fence, and that the applicant should be responsible for maintaining that fence for the duration of the fence's life. At this time, does the ZBA have any questions for me regarding this request?
Any questions for Fletcher? Fletcher, who's the applicant?
Brent C. Williams, located just down the road from this access easement.
When you say just down the road, do you mean adjacent to the access easement?
I believe it's 3 or 4 houses
I
down
see.
from the access
I
easement.
see, okay.
Yes. And the applicant is in the crowd today as well.
Okay.
Yep.
I understand that, and is that the same applicant who applied for the other fencing?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes. Yep.
any other questions for Fletcher? All right, then I think we're ready to hear from the petitioner. Work, you've been paying attention more than I do. Yeah, good work.
So I'm Brent Williams, Chairman Smith, member of the board. Thank you for.
Would you check that microphone on the side there, make sure it's green? There, okay, you're fine. Thank you.
It's tricky.
I have here with me Dottie, my wife. Connie and her Heaven Ridge, our neighbors, Alan Wang. Of some relevance, Alan lives in the house that is adjacent on the eastern side of the Barrington Drive egress point. And we represent a group of neighbors. There's in the packet an email authorizing me to speak here for our neighbors. Those that are not here are either attending a funeral in one case and visiting mom in Arizona in another case. I'd also like to greet our neighbors to the west. So Norma Freeman, Jason Tripp, legal counsel Tom Stringer. Our neighbors to the west of Barrington egress point, Barrington Drive. As you might guess, there's a story here. The narrative goes back quite a while, and I hope I'm able to convince you that a 20-foot fence would not only fulfill the old adage that good fences make good neighbors, but in this case, it also goes to fulfill the intent and purpose of Ordinance 1616 A2B. The ordinance, I presume, is intended to keep the lakeside clutter-free and visually free, so that everyone from the lakeside and the shoreline will enjoy an unfettered view of the shoreline itself, the lake itself. And I hope to convince you that that's exactly what this little piece of fence would help promote. The story goes back at least as far as the mid-2000s, when our neighbors to the west submitted a claim to the court for ownership use of the western 20 feet of this 40-foot swath of land under adverse possession. Now that claim was dismissed. And starting in about 2010 and then accelerating through the last part of the 2010s and then in around 2020, personal possessions were piled on the Barrington Drive inside that 40-foot swath that included piles of wood, swing sets, kayaks, canoes, motor vehicles routinely parked there, a boat routinely parked at the headquarters, all cluttering Barrington Drive, including a portion of Barrington Drive at the water's edge. Attempts to reconcile face-to-face failed multiple times, and ultimately, the neighbors to the east, filed suit in order to just stop the piling, just stop the encroachment, stop the incremental building, and piling of personal property on the Barrington Drive platted for open ingress and egress of all of the neighborhood into the lake. So that culminated in a multi-year process, details for which I will not read. And culminating in the court order. When the court order was being finalized, we went to bat to have a fence put there in order to just make the line, the new line, which is now 6.61 feet inside the actual platted plot of Barrington Drive, to make it visible, to make it easy to recognize, so that there would be, so that this encroachment, little bit by little bit, would just stop, and we could become neighbors, which is the goal, to actually become neighbors. You know, we have a vision of being able to enjoy that piece of property, move our small craft in and out as neighbors. That's the goal. So we got the court order. The court, the pictorial description of the encroachment, including the clutter at the very water's edge that was well inside the 6.6-foot fence line before the judge ordered it, are in your packet. The pictures go pages 20 to 30, I think, and then the water edge lines are 28 to 31. With little red stars at places where there were boats and wood piles and swing sets all inside what is now the fence line, including a pontoon boat that got out, across the fence line. So hence the court order, we asked for the fence to be put up, we asked to pay for the fence, we asked to maintain the fence. It's in the court order that you're responsible for maintaining the fence. And we asked for it to be aesthetically pleasing, to be no more than 4 feet tall, and to be a split rail wooden fence in keeping with the demeanor of the natural surroundings. And we're granted that as written in the court order. So we think the path to success in our neighborhood, to increase its livability, its property values, and above all, the kind of demeanor and culture of the neighborhood, is to just put a fence right next to the water's edge for those 20 feet as ordered by the court. The remainder of the fence going from the house back to has already been permitted. So that was in your packet as well. So that's not, so we're just focusing on this little 20-foot piece of split rail fence. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant?
For the markers that were there, the posts with the pink flags, were those, is that the line?
Yeah, there's actually 2 sets of pink flags, but the ones that are most obvious are the line.
Okay,
And then there's another occasional pink flag that's at the old property line, just 6 feet west of that. But yes, the main ones that you see down there, that's the fence line.
Okay.
is it appropriate to ask how it got moved over, or was this a request that was made to move the property line over, or
Here, I will offer, if I, should I?
is that appropriate, or? is that-
You've been asked.
Sure, so I can't speak for the judge. But I'll offer my view of what actually happened, because we've spent a lot of time thinking about this. You know, it turns out that Michigan has these laws from the mid-1800s of adverse possession and prescriptive easement.
Okay,
And the judge, and there was a mediator involved as well, when we were able to talk about this, you know, because for us, it seemed like, on what basis would anything be, you know, not in keeping with the original plat? And the language we kept coming back was this language of adverse possession and prescriptive easement. And you know, it's something that I don't think it serves the state very well, frankly. I think it helped the state when we were trying to settle and, you know, raise farmland and cultivate new areas, but I don't think it's serving as well now. But that was and I think the court order actually uses the term prescriptive easement.
yeah, I read that in there.
And beyond that, what was going on in Judge Connor's mind, I can't speculate.
I was just curious, I think this crops up frequently, that you have, especially on tight lot lines like you have on the lake, that, oh, well, I've got my hose over here, you know, or what have you, and, you know, things just happen, and over time, then I think you can apply that and say, oh, well, really, that's ours, or whatever, because you've been using that for so long. All right, thank you. I was just wondering what the,
Something like that.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Was there a consideration for building minor accessory structures there? So for example, like a trellis is a minor accessory structure that apparently some minor accessory structures can be built in the water body setback. Were there any considerations given to that during the course of the conversations? Okay.
We're all keeping that lot as wide open as possible.
and that's where you guys take your boats in and out. Do you use it for other stuff too, or just pretty much for the boats?
We use it for you know, going to enjoy the lakeside. at
Okay.
times, But the court order actually limits us to using it for small watercraft and limits the amount of time. Stations like the court order includes, you know, bench, might be put there to sit on. It got really granular.
Mm.
So it's primarily for, lake access.
So does everyone else down there have a seawall? And then that one lot doesn't have a seawall or?
Correct, there's a seawall on Allen's property on the east side.
Okay.
And then there's bricks and stuff in the water that's not a seawall, but it's designed to prevent some. prevent
Erosion and stuff, yeah. Okay.
As far as, but otherwise it's a grassy inlet to the lake with some bricks to the water.
Are the 8 parties to the lawsuit, are they all the people who own lots in Half Moon Lake subdivision?
They're not.
How are their rights being addressed?
Their rights to,
Well, for example, I believe that you agreed with the court that you would put a fence down the middle of Barrington Drive, which was dedicated to all the people who own lots in the subdivision.
quite the opposite.
Oh,
So we agreed with the judge to put a fence down one edge, 6 feet in, whose explicit purpose is to keep the rest of it open.
I understand, but what I'm asking you is whether the other lot owners were a party to that at all,
They were not a party to the lawsuit.
okay?
They were very.
And they didn't join in your permitting request either,
Correct. We didn't ask them to.
okay?
We chose to come forward with people who were
Okay,
in the court.
okay,
Court case.
I don't have any other questions. Thank you. That moves us on to finding the right page. I think we're ready for any letters that you have in the file.
No correspondence received for
Okay.
this particular case.
Then we'll open it up to any comments from the public in attendance here tonight. Mr. Stringer, you want to address the ZBA? Identify yourself and make sure your green light is on.
Push it really hard,
This,
that little button. And then there.
there it is.
Good deal.
So I represent Norma Freeman, who's the owner of the property, and Jason Tripp, who's her son, who resides. And the way the property, the original request for me was to come and say we'd rather have a 3-foot fence instead of a 4-foot. And the location of the fence was going to be left up to you. We weren't disputing it. We had a long, difficult litigation and didn't expect to come in and talk about the equities of what happened and didn't happen. So that wasn't planned. But I should say that Norma has owned this property since 1980 and has used that part of the property that ultimately was separated as by the 6.61 feet and was in essence the tree line. And nobody ever used the other side of the tree line towards Norma's property. So that's how it's been used for literally over 40 years. So we're not talking about a 15-year prescriptive easement issue. And no, there was never an addressing the accessory structure whatsoever. I guess I don't want to get into what really happened here, but the bottom line is that it's been very difficult, for the Freemans. And everyone, except maybe one of the people who were part of this litigation have lakefront property. So they have exactly lake access to the property, but they chose to make this be their fight, to say, oh, this is the access that we want. That's neither here nor there. We reached an agreement. We had an arbitrator, Nick Lajura, if anybody knows him, he's a Chelsea attorney, very good, and he helped resolve this ultimately. And then Judge Connors endorsed it. So whatever criticism might be of Judge Connors is misled, or even Nick Lajura. We worked very hard to reach a resolution, and So they have asked me, and maybe I'll have something to say, to at least say, we'd rather have a 3-foot fence and not a 4-foot fence. Just seems like 4 foot would be unsightly. We recognize there's a court order, and we're not asking you to not follow that court order. But if the township rules are that it shouldn't be, as long as the extra 20 feet, we defer to you to do that, and make your own decision on that. We're not going to stand here and object to an agreement that we reach. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to address them. Or if anybody has a question for Norma, who is the one who's owned the property for 45 years, or Jason who lives there, I'm more than happy to make them be available.
Anybody have questions for Mr. Stringer? I just was wondering, on the determination of the prescriptive easement. That too was just determined by the parties to this litigation.
That's true. We attempted to subpoena township representative before Mr. Was it Fire, am I pronouncing right? So, and it was objected to have him testify. So it's not like the township didn't know this bad.
Oh, I was just thinking about the other neighbor.
I understand totally. And no, the other neighbors didn't intervene, didn't get involved. This has been highly publicized matter and.
But they weren't given actual notice of the litigation
No.
either. Is that right? Okay.
Clarify. Mr. Williams and his people filed a lawsuit. We
Yeah.
had to file a lawsuit.
But as far as you know, you would have seen the returns of service for folks that had been made parties to the suit.
Absolutely.
And you didn't see returns from all of the people who own lots of the subdivision.
Yeah, the only people who were involved were the individuals who sued the family. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
And do your clients want to come up and talk to us? Green light?
Button, there's a button on the side. Down further, right there. Push hard. And the green light should come on. Thank you.
My name is Joanna Green, and I really don't have anything to say except for I am very relieved because the bond is completely finished. I have no ill feelings against anybody, including what I was decided, we already had a bid, meeting and lots of decisions and discussions for a long time. And, I was very disappointed to hear, like, Mr. Williams, some of the things that he said, because in my eyes, they were not exactly truthful, but that's okay. There is a chance, and I respect, and we have the right to say what we feel anyway. I enjoyed having my beautiful place, raising family there. And if they have a fence that's 4 foot tall that blocks your view of the neighborhood, because I'm 5'1", so it's a pretty high fence. And I was concerned about going, past by the lake because I have grandchildren that swim there and they're not 4 foot tall yet. So, we've always used the lake to swim and do water ski and enjoy it, and safety is important. So that was my concern. I didn't want a 4 foot fence personally because of safety issues. We need to see, I mean, we've had accidents on the lake where I had a boat and pull a skier into one of the docks, and I had to be one of the first responders to that person. And it was a good thing we didn't have any blocked view. So, as a person that is, caring about other people and help, I just think that it's an obstruction of view and it's really tall. So I would prefer that it wasn't a tall. And I really have nothing to say except to thank you very much for the.
Thank you. Any questions of this?
If you have any-
Thank you.
I want to ask a question. The people to the west of you, or have they said anything? Or I mean, I guess there wasn't any letters from anyone to the west, would they have known about this that was happening or
So I kind of directionally encompassed. So I'm
towards
trying to
Treasure
think-
Island? No.
Go
toward-
back towards. Boone.
If you're facing, yes,
Okay, they were aware, very aware, but they chose not to get involved because they had no complaints about anything. They were sought after by parties to be involved, but they chose not.
I mean, once, now that the fence has been, it's settled that there's supposed to be a fence. I mean, they're not here to represent themselves. I guess they knew that this was happening, that,
I don't know, I know that one person knew for sure, and they had verbalized that they were going to be.
okay, all right, thank you.
I can't speak for them. Thank you.
Hello, my
Hi.
name is Jason Tripp. Nice to meet you. So I've lived at that house since I was 5 years old, so 43 years now. 5 years, something like that. And basically the way Edgewater's broke up on Half Moon, there's multiple accesses like that. So I don't know if they just kind of, that one access is like our chunk of Edgewater. And then each little chunk has its own access. And that's kind of how that lake's been laid out for forever. We also have a stone seawall where, most of them have, I don't know, manufactured seawall or whatever, so that's kind of it's an access, but you can't really put a boat in there without a great degree of difficulty. Canoes or, kayak, rowboat, something like that, something you can carry basically without, using a monster tractor or some kind of crazy thing like that. So anyways, and then the 6 feet, there's a massive tree line. The trees have been there. I mean, the house was built in 1950. I think the record shows 65, but that's not accurate. So, it's in the 50s. And those trees have been there forever. Kind of, that's sort of what dictated the line to us our entire lives. So that's kind of what we, asked for, which is where the prescriptive thing comes from. And the fence, we had quite an argue with them back and forth to make sure we had gaps, because we used to go in and out of that everywhere along the entire line, because our house is corner lot. Has 2 road fronts and a lake front. So there's a sidewalk comes off Barrington, goes directly up our side, patio into our kitchen entrance to the house. And then you have the one off of Edgewater, right, that goes to the back entrance. And we have a drive-through garage, which is why we needed a 40-foot gap. I can barely even get my boat out of my front yard. The fence, they wanted to fence the entire thing, so. And my objection to anything, I guess, would be just the height of it, 3-foot fence just seems fine. It's just to demarcate that line. That's just basically, I don't know how I feel about it all. Definitely feel like there were some comments made that were a little disingenuous, so, but other than that.
Any questions for this gentleman? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Can I say one of them?
Yes.
We're not as doing this time. Ever since we moved, that I personally moved there in 1980, my husband and I always maintained that 40-foot road that nobody had used. I mean, it would be a wild field if it wasn't maintained. When you drive down there, anytime, it looks like plush green grass, because it's very well manicured all the time. There was never any issue until, and I always thought that the tree line was our property line, because that's what Mrs. Bastuba told me when we bought the home. But until we got the actual survey done by Boss, out of Hollow, it showed that that was not a tree line, but we had used it forever. But that we hung hammocks between the trees, and we enjoyed it. I had a swing set. It's not just a swing set, it was a built cedar swing set that I specifically brought back from Mississippi for my mom and my dad, because I cared for them until they died at age 95, and we would go there and set and swing. It was for the enjoyment. The swing is still there, and it's moved in a little bit when it was, but it's like we care for the property. We love living there. And we've never, I personally never had any issue with anybody until all this came up. But we still maintain it. We do have some extra neighbors now that have decided to help mow the lawn. That would be the next door neighbor, Mr. Ryan, and then somebody down the street comes once in a while and mows it, but we still maintain it. We rake it and make sure it looks good. And if you, I seriously, at any time, if you drove through there, you would think it was beautiful, because it looks really nice.
Thank you. Anyone with any questions for Fletcher about this matter?
I do have one.
Yes.
Hopefully it's simplified. So I'm just trying to look at the code, the zoning code. So looking at 1616A2 B, where it says, you know, obviously nothing, and that's what they effectively have to appeal. If we were in other zones or other locations, we'd be under the general provision 1616A. And 1616A does talk about clear vision zones, specifically 3 feet. And so what I'm wondering is what the intent is in why in clear vision zones it would be defined as 3 and not defined at all for any other locations. When do clear vision zones come into play, I guess?
Sure. Clear vision zones only come into play when adjacent to a roadway or a driveway. So the clear vision zone is there to ensure that drivers can maneuver safely and see oncoming traffic and pedestrians. Clear vision zone doesn't address, I guess, views of lakefront per se.
Understood. And I know that the clear vision zone is not part of this discussion. Again, I'm just trying to understand some of the guidelines that are behind the zoning code.
Yeah, the intent of the ordinance, of course, is to maintain views of the waterways, but it's stated in a few different sections, specifically water body setbacks. When you have adjacent neighbors, your house can't project past the line drawn between the back walls of 2 homes. That's to promote the views of the lake. The prohibition of fences in the waterfront yard, that's to promote the views of the lake. So the intent is there to maintain that vision.
Thank you.
What's your thought, what is your thought on the basis for granting a variance of this nature?
Well, I personally think that this case is extremely unique because this access is an amenity to neighboring property owners. It's not for private use, it's for the neighboring residents to use to access. I think it acts more like 16.162A, kind of like a commercial recreation conservation or public district, even though it falls smack dab in the middle of a lake residential district. So I think it's certainly unique. However, I do think you can also make the argument that the intent of the ordinance is to maintain those views of the lake and, you know, to keep objects out of that yard.
Do you have any concerns with the fact that none of these permits were requested by the owner of the property?
Well, there's no owner of this easement.
Yes, there is. All the people in the subdivision have a right to
Oh.
use the easement.
Correct. So yeah, common ownership. The original permit application was ran by the township's legal counsel when Brett originally applied. We were directed to proceed with this hearing, and there was no concerns brought up about
Okay,
that original application.
okay. All right,
Mhm.
I have
yes.
one more question.
Sure.
It's my understanding that the court order referenced a split rail fence. What by definition is a split rail fence? Because if it's
Sure.
what I'm thinking, it's fairly open.
Yeah, so imagine post,
Yep.
2 holes and 2 sticks
The
going
rail's gone
across.
across.
Yep, split rail. It has to have those two stakes to be considered a split rail, yeah.
And to be clear about the court order. Dexter Township, not a party to that lawsuit. Many of the people who live in the subdivision, not parties to that lawsuit. A settlement between the people who were parties to the lawsuit resulted in a judge entering an order that they were comfortable with. Accurate? I have a serious concern about lakefront property. That we shouldn't allow fences in the water body setback. And I've not heard any basis for granting a variance in this situation. The people around this area, their ownership may change, but if we say, yeah, that's okay, you can put a fence in the water body setback, everybody's got to see it, and everybody's got to think, well, why can't I have one of those? My wife particularly, who lives on a lake, would love to have a fence between herself and her neighbors. But the township says in the water body setback, you're not to have fences.
So I have a question for you, because I feel like this is part of where I was going with when I was talking about the minor accessory structures. So minor accessory structures include things like trellises, docks, seawalls, retaining walls, sidewalks, low decks, and patios. According to, well, the definition of what is a minor accessory structure is in 1610. And in terms of water body setbacks, when it talks about it, minor accessory structures at 1634. Just so that we have the references. If one was to consider a trellis, a minor accessory structure, which is defined in the first part of 1610. And, you use the trellis for what it's used for, you throw grapevines on it, whatever, that would block it, but there's a potential argument here that a trellis could fall under what's allowed, permitted in a water body setback under 1634.
But a fence,
But a fence wouldn't.
Well,
what
a
we're
trellis,
asking about is a fence.
a trellis would be
agree.
less opaque. I mean, it would more, a trellis would be more opaque,
Because,
because it's,
right,
There's a
But
50% limit on the opacity.
yes.
okay. So there you go. And this is less opaque, I would suggest than, I'm just playing devil's advocate here, Brooke, I understand your position here. And again, I'm trying to resolve this in my mind, if you told me, hey, and I feel like I kind of sprung this on you, if you said to me, hey, all those things in 1634 that the water body setback does not apply to, docks, seawalls, retaining walls, sidewalks, and low decks and patios are all below the line of sight.
And if they had wanted to say it doesn't apply to fences, they could have said that
could have
right
said
there
that.
as well.
What is the uniqueness here that separates their need for a fence that's different than any other lake owner has for a fence? That's the question. Is there something unique? Number one, it's not dividing two private properties. It's dividing I don't know what the word is. A community easement. I don't know if that's considered a public easement or some sort of hybrid public-private, because it only applies to the.
It only
people.
applies to people.
So it is, that fence is different than almost anything else. Except that anyone else who borders an prescriptive easement can say, and these aren't unique, right? That these access points exist. They'd rightly be able to say, why can't we have a fence along our community easement when we've given these people a fence? Just because there was a lawsuit by some subset of beneficiaries of this easement that resulted in a compromise. I don't know if that makes it somehow unique, but it seems to me anyone who's along an whatever this is, public easement, access easement, could say, I want a fence too.
I'm not sure where who this direct question gets directed to. Does the court order say that the fence has to be built in the water body setback? That's part A of my question. And part B is, if it does, and we were not to grant this, what happens? In other words, who has jurisdiction?
The judge did not order the township to do this.
The judge ordered plaintiffs of the original parties to do it.
To do this.
Okay,
And he only ordered them to do it because they agreed and asked him to order them to do it.
interesting.
And so if you ever want to do something in the township, you sue your neighbor, get a consent judgment, and then tell the township, hey, the judge said, I get to build this house where I want to build it.
To me, the judges, I wouldn't say it's irrelevant, but he's got no authority or power over us at the current state. Obviously, if someone wants to appeal whatever it is that we do, at some point, there would be jurisdiction in the court, but it's got no effect on us.
So you're saying the practical difficulty, the unique condition here is that this is a communal land, private, semi-private.
Whatever you
public,
call this,
whatever
right.
we call it. And that's the unique situation here that differs from the remaining lots in the area.
Correct.
So that-
It's not two private property owners next to each other. I'm not saying I agree with the argument. As a lawyer, I'm just making the argument. You could say, this is unique.
In this particular case,
Yeah.
as I read the order granting the easement rights of the neighbor to the west, this really then becomes a fence between their property and the rest of the neighbor's property.
And then
And so it's just like any other fence that people want to put up, because they're agreed.
I'm not understanding. Run that one by me. I'm
Well,
not understanding this.
the-
argument.
The order says that the folks who own the 6.1 feet to the west of where the fence is gonna be installed have a permanent prescriptive easement over that land.
But doesn't the fence is at the edge of the remaining access? It's not between two there's no fence that's between two private property
It's
owners.
a fence between the privately owned prescriptive easement.
Yes.
On the west side.
Yes,
And the quasi publicly owned.
yes. That's different than property, that's different than us two are neighbors. This is the fence that would go here and here.
It is, but find me a place in the zoning ordinance that makes that distinction.
It doesn't, that's why they need a variance, and the question of whether that's sufficiently unique, that's all, that's why.
Okay,
And I don't know what the answer is, but that's the question.
You know, too, usually I go and I look at practical difficulty and I read, it's the last couple lines in that definition that I am able to hang my hat on, and I can't say in reading those last few lines that I feel the same way in this situation. And that's making it more difficult for me. Because usually when I read it, am I
Yeah,
still
by all
allowed to
means.
read it? So a practical difficulty is a special or unique conditions that are peculiar to a lot that cause compliance with the standards of this ordinance to deprive the property owner of substantial rights similar to those enjoyed by other lots in the same zoning district. So in that part, I feel pretty comfortable with a particular answer, I guess, and I don't want to sway you guys. But then here's the rest. Economic, personal, or financial hardship alone does not constitute a practical difficulty. Additional inconvenience, aesthetic considerations, personal preferences, or neighbors' opinions are not considered a practical difficulty. And normally that addresses some issue that we have a practical difficulty, and this is a situation where that's not the case. So, you know, I have to look at that first part, the first part of the definition, what is a practical difficulty?
So to add to that element, when I looked into the next question, is it self-created?
Yeah,
And because this is an agreement, a mediated agreement,
it's not so.
it's not necessarily, it doesn't seem to fall into that definition of self-created, of not. The double negatives here always get me stuck. Practical difficulty is not self-created. In this scenario, I feel like it is self-created
Okay.
and might not meet that
Criteria.
criteria also. So there's the really muddy one of
Mhm.
practical difficulty, whether it's there or not, but then there's also the, if it is, was it self-created? And then I come back to the intention of the zoning code originally, especially with the lake water body setbacks and the provisions to not have fences there.
Yeah.
Which again is about keeping open view. You know, what's proposed, I don't necessarily feel like blocks views. And if it weren't for the fact, so in that scenario, I'm comfortable with that. But it's this whole precedence question then that we've already raised before. Well, if one person now has a reason to put a fence
Yeah.
between the properties, then is, you know, how many more people are gonna go and find a really good reason that may include having to go to the extent of lawsuits, et cetera, and come back to us with a court order to put another fence in. And where is the protection that in granting this, it's not opening doors for future
Yeah.
fence disputes
If,
and water body setbacks?
if there was no lawsuit and the homeowners association, whatever entity represents the homeowners, came to us and said, we want to build a fence along our easement. I mean, that's essentially what we're being asked to do.
Mhm.
Would we approve that?
We're being asked to approve the part that's in the water body. The other portion is conforming.
I understand.
Isn't it? I guess that
To the
fundamentally
extent-
speaking, it's
right.
conforming, right?
Right.
So it's
to-
only the water body segment that is truly non-conforming and therefore a question.
Well, of course, the rest of it was approved on an application by a non-owner of the property where the fence is being installed.
Mm.
Effectively, a majority of those who spoke up though.
I'm not sure that that's my definition of everybody in the subdivision.
But that said, I
But
come back to
that said, it's not relevant to the water body setback issue.
Yeah, and the only thing about the court order was that it was so specific on the type of fence. But I mean, could somebody technically build a split rail fence where it's more than just those two? You know, normally when I see a split rail fence, I think there's two slats going horizontally across, but somebody could build one where it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, you know what I mean? Like, that's not out of the realm of possibility. So I'm struggling with, you know, could this be interpreted in a way or applied in a way that would block that visibility that is so treasured in our.
I'm not sure if Fletcher has any insight on this, and I'm not sure if I do either. But I think that there's more to the no fences in the water body setback than just the view. It's the flavor around the lakes of not having everybody take their fence down to the water. It gives just a more open feel around the lake and some people wander back and forth and talk to their neighbors over that water body area, unfettered by fences having been placed there.
Well, true, and all the property owners within the area are notified of the variance like everywhere else, and we didn't get one objection to anyone
Yeah.
this being put there.
Mhm.
I'm not sure that constitutes a waiver of their rights.
It's not necessarily a waiver of their rights, but they understood what was happening, certainly. They had if they had an opportunity to come and tell us they don't.
They've seen what happens to people who get into fights over
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, it doesn't. May I ask Fletcher a question?
Of course.
Fletcher, that portion of the fence that extends into the water body setback, what percentage is it of the total length of the fence?
Ooh, let me,
I just need kind of like a visualization because
I'd
How
say
deep is the
it's-
lot?
It's a
It's
sixth,
50.
a sixth of the whole.
A
length of-
sixth?
Yeah, something like
Okay.
that maybe, or.
I'd like to verify that
Yeah.
because the intent of the applicant was really, one of the things that was mentioned, and I don't want to put my words in their mouth, but my understanding is part of the intent was so that it would be visually discerning, where the property line ends, so to speak.
We have a
And
drawing.
we do, but I want a percentage.
16%.
16%. Okay. So,
It's pretty good with a six.
you were pretty good. So
Good job.
that means 84% of that line, there would be a fence along. No, yes,
Minus the openings.
minus the openings.
So it goes, 20-foot of fence, 40-foot opening. And there's another set of fence that isn't labeled the distance, but then 6 feet of opening and then 15 feet of
Okay.
opening.
Okay, yeah, oh, thank you.
So the requested setback. Right. The request is for fence that is not it doesn't adjoin another section of fence. There's a 40-foot
Right,
gap
there's a
there.
40-foot gap there.
So it's really a standalone 20-foot segment of fence
Mm,
in the water body setback.
No,
which is not as visually distinguishable.
I don't think that's right. Isn't there
Okay.
fence there?
No, the blue is gaps.
Oh, blue is
So,
gaps. Yep, you're
New
right.
20, gap
Yeah.
of 40.
Yeah.
New, they didn't label the amounts of
Yeah.
the other sections,
Yeah.
but.
Yep.
Yeah, it's,
You get the idea. Well,
Are we ready to consider the conditions, the requirements at this point, or do we need to talk more?
You mean the criteria?
Yeah, the criteria. That's what I meant when I said conditions.
Because he did suggest we have some conditions too, but obviously we need to go through the criteria first.
I think first we should see if there's support for the variance. And again, if people have other questions or things to discuss or other thoughts, we should address them all.
It's hard because I go either way. But I feel strongly about, you're right, the precedent that this could set. And really, the only thing that regulates the type of fence is the corridor,
Which we were not,
which the township was not a party to, and the rest of.
which the people who live up there weren't a party to, only the parties to the lawsuit.
Well, except there's the opacity requirement in the zoning ordinance, so there's only a couple of different kinds of fences it could have been, anyway, I think.
Are we ready?
This is.
Yes.
Do we want to start with Peter?
Yeah, thank you.
We'll go this way for a change.
All right, well, you haven't read anything yet.
Well, I haven't. So
hang on.
the question is, should we allow the fence to be located in the water body yard in this situation? And our criteria are number one, practical difficulty 29.06 C1. The strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance would constitute a practical difficulty. And we have in our ordinance a definition of what constitutes a practical difficulty in case anybody's concerned about that. So, Peter, do you have a thought?
No,
And Sean
no.
and Beth
No.
and Kathy?
No.
And the chair votes no as well. Physical condition, the practical difficulty, which we've determined does not exist, is due to some physical condition peculiar to the property involved, and this is where it's all strange. Peter?
Well, the second half is true, but the first half is not true, so I have to vote no.
Sean?
No.
Yeah,
No.
Kathy?
No.
Chair votes no as well. 3, self-created 2906C3. The practical difficulty is not self-created. Peter?
No.
Sean?
No.
Beth?
No.
Kathy?
No.
And the chair votes no as well. Reasonable amount necessary. The variance is a reasonable amount necessary to mitigate the practical difficulty, which we've determined doesn't exist. Peter?
No.
Sean?
No.
Beth?
No.
Kathy?
No.
Chair votes no as well. Public health, safety and welfare. Does the, that's 2906C5. Approval of the variance will not be injurious to the public health, safety and welfare. Peter?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Beth?
It's that double negative killing me right now. Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes as well. 6, adjacent properties, 2906C6. Approval of variance will not affect the use of the adjacent properties or the area in a substantially adverse manner. Peter?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes as well. 7, intent of the ordinance 2906C7, approval of variance is consistent with the intent of the ordinance. Peter?
No.
Sean?
No.
Beth?
No.
Kathy?
No.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, the chair votes no as well. The request for the variance has been denied.
I'd like to
You
make a
want to make a
motion.
motion?
Okay. Just want to make sure I have the proper section. So the request for the variance for petition 25 ZBA-002 for, gosh, is there a property ID, a tax ID number for this?
I don't think there is.
No.
No.
No, for the Barrington Drive access easement or lake access located between 13816 and 13800 Edgewater Drive, Gregory, Michigan 48137. As requesting a variance from section 16.16A2B to allow a split rail fence to be located in the water body yard. Specifically for the installation of a 20-foot, 4-foot tall split rail fencing along the Barrington Drive access point extending to the edge of Half Moon Lake, has been denied.
Second. Yes, Kathy,
No.
you're gonna second.
Oh, yes, second. Sorry.
Okay. All right, and we'll go our strange way and ask Peter first. Peter?
Motion was to deny.
Motion?
The motion.
Yes.
Yes. Sean?
Yes.
Beth?
Yes.
Yes.
Kathy? And the chair votes yes as well. Sorry, your variance has been turned down. And there's not anything more we can do this evening on this matter. Thank you for attending.
Thank you.
Sorry we took so long.
No problem. That's what we cheaper this way.
Thank you.
All right, so that means I have to.
Can we ask Janice if she has a concern? The motion, but she was giving me a funny face.
Oh,
Write that down. You had it written down, or did you just?
I literally spoke it right off of the caption and added is denied at the end. So if you want to sit down and go through it together, we can. On the caption, that's how I do all my motions. We'll sit down after.
Don't reveal the magic.
yeah.
I'm thinking, gosh, she pulls these out of.
Exactly.
And she's Worker,
No.
I'll never be able to do this job.
You can.
I want to run for vice chair. I'm just kidding.
I'm sorry that we're taking so long. I'm trying to find page number 2
You
of
need
the
to go
agenda.
back to,
It's the second page of the agenda.
right here. Here you go.
What?
We have to go back though to address the first
Yes.
issue.
Yeah, well, we will.
Oh,
Okay,
we need to circle back to the first case.
oh, I guess there's not gonna be any public comment on non-agenda items.
Mm-mm.
The public wanted to leave.
It looks like the public.
But we can shoehorn in here exactly what we ought to do about the one that we want to not decide tonight.
Sure. So after reading through the bylaws a few times during your conversations,
We gave you a lot of time, didn't we?
yes, I am confident that the ZBA can postpone this, whether indefinitely or they can pick a date when they want to do it. As long as it's properly noticed that it's coming back to the board and adheres to the Open Meetings Act, we should be good to go.
May I make a motion to postpone?
Yes, you can. I just wanted to consider, would it be just good for your office if we pick a date out in the future so that it doesn't just get forgotten? And it could be a year from now.
Sure. I was thinking during the meeting, I think 6 months would
Okay,
be a good
6
time
months.
frame. So let's see.
That's plenty.
It is May 13th, so June, July, August, September, October, November.
Yes, so. we
November
want to
4th.
Adjourn to the next meeting of the ZBA that is scheduled in December or later. In other words, we might not meet in December, and so would you agree with that?
May not be November either.
So-
Vote.
Thank
Vote.
you.
Thanks for the
Uh,
election.
The November meeting is November 4th
Oh,
and December 2nd is the
Yeah,
following
but
meeting.
what I'm saying is we might not have other matters or.
Is that an election though?
Yes, that's the first Tuesday after the first Monday. That would be an election.
An election. So we really want to postpone till
I don't know if
December
there's anything on the
2nd.
ballot.
Okay.
Can we postpone it, say, till the December or next
Well, or,
meeting?
yeah, that's what I was gonna
Next
say, is to,
thereafter.
is to
Yeah, however.
December or the next scheduled meeting of the
Sure.
ZBA.
And I would recommend just putting in your motion to have reflected in the meeting minutes that, you know, your reasoning behind the postponement is to allow the applicant time to revise their plans to reflect tonight's comments.
Yeah, I don't know if she's writing that down or not. Don't think she is. Okay,
was writing it down, so you better check it in my.
oh, sorry.
Reason to allow applicant.
I have it written, so we'll have a session this evening. How does that sound? Okay. So I would like to make a motion to postpone petition ZBA. Petition number 25 ZBA -001 to Frank and Lisa Johnson for tax ID D0402 400 025 for the property located at 9433 Dexter Pickney Road. To December 2nd or the next scheduled meeting thereafter to allow the applicants to revise their plans reflecting ZBA's comments that they would like more clarity in the design
Beautifully
of the
said.
proposed structure.
I'll second. that.
Thank you.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Peter, I didn't hear you say.
Oh, he did. Next time he'll speak louder.
Yes.
That's usually not a
No,
problem.
his lips need to move. I was watching.
Okay, well, or he'll just catch it in the draft. So, now we're on to, concerns of the ZBA members, the Director of Planning and Zoning and the Recording Secretary. And we always care the most about our recording secretary.
Welcome back, everybody.
Thank you.
Looking forward to the next 4 months.
Okay, and you have nothing else to, When are we gonna get a microphone that when you turn it on, it just stays on?
You know what? They're coming in and they're putting, tomorrow, they're putting speakers above both of these monitors that aim out to the audience, so the audience can hear what you're saying.
Well, that
Okay.
sounds wonderful, but why can't they come
I-
up with a microphone that doesn't turn on? I mean, it'd be fine if it turned off after 3 hours, but for it to turn off after 3 minutes or 30 seconds or
Well, I
whatever.
hate to tell you, but, most of what everybody said at the microphone was not recorded because I could watch the green dot and.
Go off. Well, who's our liaison with the audio video people?
Our administrative assistant.
Okay,
Samantha, Michelle.
Samantha.
Okay.
So send her an email, the office administrator.
wait, who is our? administrator?
Sam.
Samantha Edwards.
Oh, Samantha. Oh, I thought she was higher up on the food chain, because she should be.
She'll do it. She does everything.
That's what I'm saying, is I thought that she was the actual superintendent or something. Okay,
They'd have to close Dexter Township, I'm sure.
yeah, okay.
Emails, sends out the public speaking microphone, and we really need to have one that stays on.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, any concerns that the Director of Planning and Zoning would like to address?
No concerns, but I'm happy to be here and happy that I got through my first CBA meeting
You know, what?
with you all.
Excellent, and I couldn't be happier that you're in this position. I think you're gonna be great at it, and it's gonna make our job easier.
Sure.
And I am wanting you to think about the thing about this case that irks the bejesus out of me, which is, how does somebody who doesn't own a piece of property get a zoning permit to do work on the property? That's not right. And,
And why didn't the judge see that?
the judge, everybody makes a big deal of this, the judge. What happened was these people had a long-running argument between themselves that they couldn't resolve. Ultimately, they came to an agreement about how it's going to be resolved. They wrote it up and they said to the judge, "Your Honor, you know this case that's been on your docket for a while, we've agreed to a resolution." And the judge said,
Where do I sign?
"Splendid," and signed it. And because that's, I mean, they don't have time to say, "Well, I'm not sure you guys thought of everything when you solved your dispute among yourselves." Now, if the judgment said something about, and Judge Connors will come by every day to look at the fence and make sure it's okay, he would have noticed that. But just when he's presented with a consent judgment to resolve a lawsuit, he signs it. And then somehow or another, our legal counsel seemed to believe that his name on that order that wasn't directed to us should cause us great concern. And that's like, so,
What's very funny and ironic is I was subpoenaed to appear before him a year ago, Judge Connors, and did on behalf of a title company on Edgewater. That
oh,
there was an issue and,
uh-huh.
anyway, but he was so mad in that, hearing or
He
whatever.
was irritated with somebody.
He said, "These lake people," I mean, he just went off on lake people. And, I'm just there thinking,
That's how we are.
No, I said-
We're very picky.
I came right back. I said, "It's not how we are." I said, "My little neighborhood is so wonderful," and all this stuff. It was funny, but,
I just want to say I'm really happy with the packet that we received.
Yes, for
Thank you,
sure.
Roger.
Great packet.
Great.
And
packet.
most of the pages even have numbers on the bottom.
I know.
The whole thing.
Thank
No,
It's always been my
it's
thing.
really nicely done. Pleasure.
It's
We
very
love you.
nice.
Yep, I will do my best producing great packets moving forward. We do have an upcoming meeting in June. It's another front yard setback variance request. 80 feet for Dexter Town Hall Road as well.
Yeah.
So that's be on the lookout for agendas and packets in the upcoming week.
Sounds good.
Um,
This way we can eat next
Yeah.
month.
and I like to blame the lake gas for some of the phone calls I get in the lake neighborhoods.
The lake,
The lake gas, like our swamp gas over
Yes.
by, yeah.
Yep,
Lake
lake
No, I
gas.
think what
Yeah,
you can
lake
blame is the size of the lots in Lake
exactly,
residential.
exactly. But I have to say, I was really happy. I think all those people seemed content when they were leaving. I think the fence was gonna drive a wedge, and I think that they all were getting along, and I think they were happy.
Could you imagine being in litigation for years over this thing and bitching for years? You come to the last hurdle, you can't agree between the two of you that it should be 3 feet or 4 feet. How ridiculous is that? We have to come here, we have to referee that last thing.
Yeah,
They can't settle that?
yes, well,
I'm not in favor of fences going down to the water body.
so
Ever.
I find that we're at the end of our
Sorry.
agenda. And as a result, we are adjourned
Right. Okay,
much later than should have been.
well, thank you. Sean, it's a pleasure. That was fun.
Yeah, Sean. thank you
Elasticity.
I do have one.
For doing it with us.
I was.
I don't know how old the other. It's only like several
So
years.
Sean, are you an architect?
There's been
Is that
many
what you bring
amendments.
to the deal? Yeah.
Many.
Oh, that is so cool.